While my company hit $8.4 million in valuation, my wife was sleeping with my best friend in our bed. I discovered their betrayal the same day I signed the biggest deal of my career. "We've been laughing at you for 2 years," she smirked, champagne in hand. 6 months later, they both signed over everything they owned to me, hands trembling. I'm Alex Mercer, and this is how I went from sleeping in my car to owning 3 homes. But before I tell you how I legally took everything from them, you need to meet the people who destroyed my life, and the stranger who changed everything. I used to wake up at 5:15 every morning in our Westlake Village home, careful not to disturb Rebecca as she slept. By 5:30, I'd be brewing Colombian dark roast in the kitchen, overlooking the garden she'd spent 3 years perfecting. That garden was my first clue to who Rebecca truly was: meticulous, patient, playing the long game. At 6:15, I'd kiss her goodbye, her sleepy smile warming me as I headed out to build our future. "Go get 'em, Tiger," she'd say, her blonde hair spilling across the pillow I'd bought her in the lawn on our 5th anniversary. The pillow she'd later share with my CFO and best friend, Daniel. I'd founded Mercer Solutions in 2017, a cybersecurity firm specializing in financial institutions. By 2021, we were protecting 17 banks and 4 credit unions from increasingly sophisticated threats. Daniel joined 6 months after launch. We'd been roommates at MIT, and when his startup failed, I offered him 15% equity and the CFO position. "We're going to build an empire together," I told him the day he signed the papers, clinking glasses of 18-year-old Macallan in my sparse first office. "To loyalty," he'd said, looking me straight in the eye. What a goddamn joke that turned out to be. Most days, I'd return home around 8 p.m., sometimes later. Rebecca never complained. "Your hard work is our future," she'd say, massaging my shoulders as I reviewed contracts at our kitchen island. We'd eat takeout from Emilio's, the Italian place where I'd proposed 7 years earlier. She'd talk about her day managing our charitable foundation, the passion project I'd funded for her with my first million. Fridays were sacred, date night with Rebecca, followed by Saturday brunch with Daniel and his revolving door of girlfriends. "Can't find anyone like your Rebecca," he'd say, raising his mimosa. "You hit the jackpot, brother." I remember exactly when things started shifting, though I didn't recognize it then. April 2022, after securing the SunTrust contract. I brought home champagne and Rebecca seemed annoyed rather than excited. "You're late, again. I texted you. Biggest contract in company history. We're officially playing with the big boys now." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's great, babe. Daniel called earlier about the foundation fundraiser next week." "He called you directly?" "You weren't answering, as usual." She uncorked the champagne with practiced ease. "Someone has to handle things when you're unavailable." I ignored the red flag, too busy celebrating our success. Later that month, Rebecca changed her phone password. When I mentioned it casually, she said, "Just being security conscious. Isn't that what you preach to your clients?" Daniel started dropping by our house on weeknights when I worked late. "Just helping Rebecca with the foundation strategy," he explained. "She's got amazing ideas for expansion." By summer, Rebecca had a new yoga instructor, private sessions at home 3 times weekly. She lost 15 pounds and bought an entirely new wardrobe. "You're always telling me to invest in myself," she said when I questioned the $12,000 credit card bill. My mother visited in August and pulled me aside after dinner. "Something's different with Rebecca," she whispered as we washed dishes. "She barely asked about me, and she's always on her phone." "She's busy with the foundation," I defended, though unease had taken root. "Alexander James Mercer," my mother said, using my full name as she had when I was 10. "Your father worked himself to death and never saw what was happening under his own roof. Don't make his mistake." I dismissed her concerns. Mom had always thought no woman was good enough for her only son. But a week later, I noticed Rebecca and Daniel huddled over her phone at our Labor Day barbecue, laughing until they realized I was watching. In September, I landed in San Francisco for a conference and realized I'd forgotten the presentation thumb drive. Calling Rebecca from the airport, I asked if she could overnight it. "I'm actually at yoga," she said, though I clearly heard traffic in the background. "I'll head home after and send it." I caught an earlier flight back, wanting to surprise her. Walking into our quiet house at 7 p.m., I found a note on the counter. "At dinner with Melissa to discuss foundation donors. Back by 10. Leftovers in R." Melissa was Rebecca's college roommate who lived in Portland. I called her immediately. "Melissa, it's Alex. Is Rebecca with you?" The pause lasted 2 seconds too long. "Oh, Alex, no, I'm in Portland. Rebecca mentioned she might call later this week, though." My stomach dropped. I thanked her and hung up, then checked our security system. Rebecca's car had left at 4:30 p.m. and hadn't returned. On impulse, I opened Find My Friends. She disabled location sharing. I sat in our dark kitchen until 9:45, when headlights swept across our driveway. Rebecca walked in humming, stopping abruptly when she saw me. "You're home?" Her voice pitched higher than normal. "The conference ended early?" "Where were you tonight?" I asked quietly. "I told you, dinner with foundation donors." She set her purse down carefully. "You said you were with Melissa in your note." Her face changed, so subtle I nearly missed it. A recalculation. I was supposed to call Melissa. I must have written it wrong. I had dittered with the Goldmans about their annual contribution. The Goldmans were our biggest foundation supporters. It was plausible. I almost believed her. "That's strange," I said, "because I called the restaurant where you always meet them. They said they haven't seen you in months." This was a bluff. I'd called nowhere, but her face told me everything. "You're checking up on me now?" Her voice hardened. "After all I've sacrificed while you built your precious company?" "What sacrifice, Rebecca? The foundation? The house? The car? Tell me what exactly you've sacrificed." She walked to the liquor cabinet and poured herself 3 fingers of bourbon. My bourbon, the bottle Daniel had given me for my birthday. "My youth," she said finally. "My chances. I could have done something that mattered." I felt like I'd been slapped. "The foundation doesn't matter? A vanity project you created to make yourself feel better about working constantly." She drank deeply. "A checkbox on your perfect life list." I stepped closer, smelling unfamiliar cologne on her dress. "Who were you with tonight?" She looked at me with something like pity. "Go back to your conference, Alex. We'll talk when you're calmer." "The conference is over. I'm home now, and I want to know who you were with." She walked past me toward the stairs. "I'm going to bed. This conversation is pointless." I grabbed her purse before she could take it, something I'd never done before. "Give me my bag," she snapped, lunging for it. I stepped back, opened it, and removed her phone. "If you've got nothing to hide, unlock it." "This is insane. You've completely lost it." But her face had gone pale. I held the phone out. "Prove me wrong, Rebecca." She snatched the phone and ran upstairs. I followed, reaching our bedroom as she locked herself in the bathroom. I heard the toilet flush, then water running. When she emerged, she handed me the phone, unlocked. "Happy now? Go ahead, invade my privacy." I scrolled through her messages. Nothing from Daniel, nothing suspicious at all. Her call log showed nothing unusual either. I looked up to find her watching me with cold triumph. "Satisfied? Or do you want to strip search me too?" Later, I would learn about the secret messaging app she used, about the second phone Daniel had bought her, about the bathroom trick of flushing recently deleted messages to clear cache data. But that night, I apologized. Like a fool, I apologized. The next 3 months were a slow-motion car crash of my life and business. While I scrambled to save both, they were systematically dismantling everything I'd built. October 2022. Rebecca suggested I take Daniel on the Tokyo business trip instead of her. "You two haven't had guy time in forever," she said, kissing my cheek. "Besides, he understands the business aspects better than I would." While we were gone, she emptied our joint investment account, $342,000 transferred to an offshore account I couldn't trace. November 2022, Daniel identified a security vulnerability in our banking system that required him to have full administrative access. I granted it without question. This was my best friend, the guy who stood beside me at my wedding. 2 weeks later, $1.2 million in client funds were mistakenly transferred, then restored with apologies. What I didn't know, he was testing his back door into our payment systems. December 2022, Rebecca suggested we update our wills and insurance policies. "We're worth protecting now," she said, as we signed papers making each other sole beneficiaries of everything. That same week, she convinced me to put the house in her name for tax purposes. January 2023, our biggest client reported unusual account activity. I spent 3 weeks working around the clock, missing the foundation's annual gala where Rebecca and Daniel were photographed dancing too close, her hand lingering on his chest. An employee tried showing me the photo. I dismissed it as a bad angle and fired her for creating drama. February 2023. I sold my vintage Porsche 911, $164,000, to inject emergency cash into the company after 3 clients terminated their contracts due to security concerns. Daniel assured me it was temporary. "Market correction," he said, patting my shoulder. "We'll rebuild stronger." The next day, he bought a new Mercedes. March 2023. Rebecca suggested marriage counseling. During our second session, she broke down crying about my emotional distance and obsession with work. The therapist suggested I take more time at home. I reduced my hours while Daniel volunteered to handle things. Client complaints increased. By April, I'd lost 28 pounds, couldn't sleep, developed an eye twitch. Rebecca watched me with growing impatience as I took anti-anxiety medication with my morning coffee. "Maybe you should step back," she suggested over dinner. "Let Daniel take over daily operations until you're better." "It's my company," I said, the words hollow even to me. "And it's killing you," she replied, not a trace of concern in her voice. On April 17th, I walked into our office at 6 a.m., 2 hours earlier than usual, to find email evidence that Daniel had been diverting clients to a new company, Sentinel Securities, LLC, registered in Rebecca's maiden name. I drove home in a fog, barely remembering the 20-minute trip. Rebecca's car was in the driveway, so was Daniel's Mercedes. I entered quietly through the garage, hearing their voices from our bedroom upstairs. "Getting worse. I'm worried he'll figure it out," Rebecca was saying. "He's falling apart," Daniel replied. "No one would believe him anyway. The board already thinks he's having a breakdown." "How much longer?" 2 weeks, max. The Singapore contracts are almost transferred. Once those clear, we trigger the compliance investigation, and it's done." I stood frozen at the foot of the stairs, the ultimate cliché of a husband discovering his wife's affair. But this was worse. They weren't just sleeping together. They were systematically destroying me. Something primitive took over. I climbed the stairs silently, phone recording in my pocket. They didn't notice me standing in the doorway of my own bedroom. My wife in my bed with my best friend, surrounded by papers bearing my company's letterhead. "Well," I said finally, "this explains a lot." Rebecca shrieked. Daniel jumped up, naked and pathetic, grabbing for his underwear. "Alex, Jesus, man, this isn't, we were just—" I laughed, a strange sound I didn't recognize. "Save it. How long?" Rebecca recovered first, pulling the sheet around herself. Not out of modesty, Rebecca had never been modest, but to regain control of the situation. 2 years, she said, her voice steady, "since you forgot our anniversary to close the Atlanta deal." 2 years. Half our marriage. "And the company?" I asked, looking at Daniel. He glanced at Rebecca, who nodded slightly. 6 months active planning, he admitted. "But you made it so easy, Alex, working yourself to death, trusting everyone, signing whatever we put in front of you." "We're not monsters," Rebecca added, as if that mattered now. "You'll have enough to start over somewhere smaller. The foundation stays with me, obviously." I stared at them both, these strangers wearing the faces of the people I'd loved most. Why? It was all I could manage. Rebecca sighed, impatient with my slowness even now. "Because you built everything for yourself, Alex. The company, the foundation, hell, even our marriage was just another achievement for you to unlock. Perfect wife, check." "You never saw me." "Not really." "So instead of divorce, you decided to steal my life?" Daniel shrugged. "Business decision. Maximum return, minimum investment." I stood very still, letting the recording run. "Get out of my house." Rebecca laughed. Actually laughed. "Your house? Check the deed, workaholic. Now get out before I call the police and report you for threatening us. Who do you think they'll believe? The unstable CEO having a breakdown, or the devoted wife and concerned business partner?" 3 hours later, I sat in my car in the parking lot of the Westlake Motel, a bottle of whiskey on the passenger seat, my world reduced to a duffel bag of hastily packed clothes. I called my lawyer, who confirmed the worst. The house was legally Rebecca's. The company was in crisis, with the board calling for my resignation amid concerns about my mental stability. My bank accounts showed pending transfers, everything being drained. By evening, I had $412 to my name. By midnight, I had nowhere to live. By morning, I was sleeping in my car behind a Target, using their bathroom to brush my teeth, wearing yesterday's clothes to a board meeting where I was formally removed from my own company. "We're concerned about your well-being," the chairwoman said, not meeting my eyes. Daniel sat beside her, somber and supportive. "He's been under tremendous pressure," Daniel explained. "We all want what's best for Alex." I was escorted out by security, carrying a cardboard box containing 7 years of my life. If you're feeling moved by this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. In the comments, tell me, have you ever experienced betrayal or injustice? Let's create a supportive community together. 4 weeks into homelessness, I had established a routine. Sleep in my car at the far corner of the Walmart parking lot, shower at the $10 a day gym, apply for jobs at the library using their free internet, eat once daily at whichever fast food place offered the best dollar menu deal, wash my 3 remaining dress shirts in the sink at Starbucks. No one called back, not even for entry-level IT positions. Somehow, word had spread that Alex Mercer was unstable, potentially violent, and facing serious allegations. Later, I'd learned that Rebecca and Daniel had systematically poisoned my reputation throughout the industry. On day 29 of my new life, I was parked at Starbucks, nursing a $2.45 coffee to justify occupying a table for 6 hours, when a silver-haired man in an impeccable charcoal suit sat down across from me. "Mr. Mercer." Not a question. He extended a business card so crisp it seemed to reflect light. "Warren Blackstone, Holloway and Associates." I didn't take the card. "Whatever you're selling, I can't afford it." "I'm not selling anything. I represent someone who's been watching your situation with great interest." I looked at my dirty fingernails, my wrinkled shirt. "My situation isn't exactly private. Half the tech industry is laughing about it." "Not everyone is laughing, Mr. Mercer." He placed a sealed envelope on the table. "My client would like to meet you tomorrow, 10 a.m. He stood, straightening his already perfect suit. "The address is in the envelope. A car will collect you from this location at 9:30. Why would I go to a mysterious meeting with someone I don't know? Blackstone's expression didn't change. Because you're sleeping in a 2019 Audi with 171,000 miles and an empty gas tank. Because you have exactly $27.14 left in your account. And because, unlike your wife and Mr. Weston, my client values loyalty. He walked away before I could ask how he knew those details. The envelope contained a single card with an address in the hills above Malibu. I almost threw it away, probably some competitor wanting to gloat. But curiosity and desperation won out. The next morning, a black Bentley arrived precisely at 9:30. The driver said nothing as we wound through canyons to a modern fortress of glass and steel perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. Inside, Blackstone waited in a minimalist foyer. "He'll see you now." "Who exactly is he?" I asked as we walked down a long hallway. "Someone who believes you've been treated unjustly." The hallway opened into a vast circular office. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the ocean below, but my attention was drawn to the elderly man seated at a desk that appeared to float in space. "Alexander James Mercer," he said, his voice stronger than his frail appearance suggested. "I've been following your work for some time." I recognized him immediately. Victor Holloway, technological pioneer and reclusive billionaire. His companies had revolutionized cybersecurity in the 1990s before he vanished from public life. "Sir, I don't understand." "Sit." He gestured to a chair across from him. "Do you know why Rebecca and Daniel targeted you specifically?" The question caught me off guard. I assumed because I had something they wanted. Victor smiled thinly. "Partially, but they chose you years ago, before the company was valuable. Rebecca was originally instructed to pursue Daniel, but pivoted to you when she recognized your potential." "Instructed by whom?" "My former partner's son, James Whitmore. He's built quite the organization, identifying promising startups, inserting operatives, and harvesting the technology and clients once they reach maturity." My mind raced. "You're saying this has happened before?" 17 times that we've identified. Rebecca Chen, or whatever name she's using with you, has played the wife role 3 times. Daniel specializes in financial positions. Victor pressed a button, and screens descended from the ceiling, displaying surveillance photos, financial records, and court documents. "They're professionals, Mr. Mercer, corporate grifters targeting technical founders who lack certain awareness of human nature." The screens showed Rebecca with different men, different names. Daniel in various offices, at different desks. The same pattern repeating. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've spent 7 years building a case against Whitmore's operation. We have evidence, testimony from previous victims, money trails, everything except the final piece." "Which is?" "Current, actionable evidence of their methods and a willing witness to testify." Victor leaned forward. "That's where you come in." For the next hour, he outlined a plan so audacious it bordered on insanity, except every contingency had been meticulously considered. Victor had been watching Rebecca and Daniel's operation for years, waiting for the right case, the right victim, to bring everything down. "Why me?" I asked finally. "Why not any of the others they destroyed?" Victor studied me. "Because you recorded them, Mr. Mercer. That day in your bedroom. You have the only direct evidence of them admitting their intentions." He paused. "And because, unlike the others, you have nothing left to lose." I stared at him. "How did you know about the recording?" "We've been monitoring your devices since you entered our watch list 3 years ago." Seeing my expression, he added, "We track potential targets, not just the operators. We needed to be certain you weren't part of their network." He pressed another button, and a new screen appeared. A complex chart tracking funds flowing from my former company through shell corporations into accounts belonging to Whitmore Holdings. They're nearly finished extracting value from MerceCorp. Once they're done, they'll discard it and move to the next target. We have perhaps 2 weeks before they disappear again. I stood, pacing the vast office. Even if I help you, my life is still destroyed. My reputation will be fully restored, Victor interrupted, along with your assets, your company, and your standing in the industry, plus compensation for damages. How can you promise that? Because I own the judges who will hear this case. He said it matter-of-factly. And because Whitmore stole something irreplaceable from me 20 years ago. My vengeance will be absolute, Mr. Mercer. Yours is merely a byproduct. I stopped pacing. What did they take from you? Victor's eyes hardened. My daughter, Rebecca's predecessor. She died when they discarded her after a job went wrong. He pushed a folder across the desk. Everything you need to know is in here. My contact information, timeline, resources available to you. I opened it to find bank cards, a new phone, keys, and documents. A furnished apartment in Santa Monica, 3 months prepaid, untraceable funds, a new identity if needed, and a decision to make. I closed the folder. What decision? Whether you want justice, Victor's expression darkened, or whether you want them to suffer as you have suffered. If this twist surprised you, wait until you see what happens next. Share this video with someone who needs to believe that life can turn around unexpectedly. I spent the next week in the Santa Monica apartment, studying the evidence Victor had accumulated. The operation was more extensive than I'd imagined. Dozens of victims across multiple countries, hundreds of millions stolen, at least 3 suspicious deaths, including Victor's daughter. Rebecca, whose real name was Catherine Winters, had been working for Whitmore since college. Daniel, actually Tyler Grant, was her usual partner, though they weren't romantically involved outside their performances. Their specialty was targeting tech founders with poor social skills and high intelligence, people like me who understood code better than human behavior. They study you for months before making contact, explained Jessica Novak, Victor's head of security and a former FBI agent. They learn your habits, preferences, weaknesses. By the time Rebecca approached you at that conference, she already knew what books you read, what coffee you preferred, even your childhood dog's name. That's impossible, I protested. We met by accident. I spilled coffee on her presentation notes. Jessica smiled grimly. There was no presentation. She wasn't even registered for the conference. She waited 3 days for that accident to happen. Every memory now required re-examination. Our chance introduction to Daniel at an industry event. The foundation that had been Rebecca's passion. The clients who'd been so easily poached. By day 9 of my new existence, Victor's team had established covert surveillance on both targets. Rebecca had moved Daniel into my house, for appearance's sake, they told visitors. They'd accelerated their timeline, working frantically to extract the remaining value from MerceCorp before dissolving it. On day 11, I received a call from Blackstone. It's happening. Whitmore just landed in Los Angeles. They're having dinner tonight at Providence to celebrate. The trap was ready. I just had to spring it. At 8 p.m., I walked into Providence wearing a $5,000 suit provided by Victor's team. A microphone was sewn into my tie. A tracking device nestled in my watch. Jessica and 3 security specialists were positioned throughout the restaurant. The hostess, briefed and compensated handsomely, led me directly to their table. The shock on their faces was worth every second of the past 2 months. "Alex!" Daniel recovered first, half rising. How did you?" "Sit down, Tyler." I used his real name deliberately, watching color drain from his face. "You too, Catherine. We have business to discuss." Rebecca's eyes darted toward the exits, calculating escape routes. You can't be here. There's a restraining order. Fake, I interrupted, taking an empty seat. Like your marriage license. Like Daniel's MIT degree. Like everything about both of you. I placed a thumb drive on the table. Complete documentation of your operation. Financial records, previous identities, the other companies you've destroyed. I looked directly at Rebecca. Victor Holloway sends his regards. Her composure shattered. You're working with Holloway? Let's just say we found common interests. Daniel's hand moved toward his jacket pocket. I wouldn't, I said quietly. Jessica doesn't miss, and she's had a clear shot since I sat down. His hand froze. Here's what happens next, I continued, sipping water as if discussing the weather. Tomorrow morning, federal agents will arrest James Whitmore as he boards his jet back to Geneva. Simultaneously, warrants will be executed for both of you, plus 16 associates across your network. I leaned forward. Or there's option 2. Rebecca found her voice. We're listening. Full confession. Complete cooperation. Testimony against Whitmore. Return of all assets. I paused. In exchange, you avoid prosecution. And we're supposed to believe the feds agreed to this deal? Daniel scoffed. The feds don't know about this option. This is between us and Victor. I checked my watch. You have 30 seconds to decide. After that, Jessica makes a call and events proceed as planned. They exchanged glances, a silent communication honed through years of partnership. What guarantee do we have? Rebecca asked. None whatsoever, I replied honestly. Exactly the same guarantee you gave all your victims. 10 seconds remained when Daniel nodded. What do you need from us? Everything. Starting with Mercicor. By midnight, they'd signed over control of the company to a holding entity controlled by Victor. By 2 a.m., Rebecca had provided account access to funds hidden across 12 jurisdictions. By dawn, Daniel had compiled a complete list of victims, associates, and methodologies. At 9 a.m., they entered Victor's Malibu fortress, not as guests, but as prisoners facing their prosecutor. Victor sat in the same floating desk, looking frail but emanating cold fury. Catherine, he said, using Rebecca's real name. You look just like her. Rebecca paled. I never met your daughter. No, but James showed you how to emulate her techniques, her mannerisms. Victor's voice hardened. Before he discarded her like garbage. That wasn't our operation, Daniel interjected. We never hurt anyone physically. Victor laughed, a terrible, empty sound. You destroyed lives, drove men to suicide, created wreckage that can never be fully repaired. He pressed a button, and screens descended showing faces, dozens of them. These are your victims. Memorize them. You'll be making restitution to each one. Rebecca shook her head. Impossible. The money's gone, spent or locked in Whitmore's accounts. You misunderstand, Victor said softly. Your financial penalty is separate. This restitution will be personal. You will both personally apologize to every victim, on camera, using your real names and faces. These recordings will be provided to employers, family members, and associates for the rest of your lives. The blood drained from their faces as they realized the true punishment. Exposure, humiliation, the destruction of their most valuable asset. After that, Victor continued, you will work, under supervision, to help dismantle operations like yours. Your expertise, contacts, methodologies, everything becomes a weapon against your former colleagues. For how long? Daniel whispered. Until I decide you've balanced the scales. Victor's eyes found mine. Mr. Mercer has more immediate concerns. Catherine, transfer the house back to him. Tyler resigned from Mercicor effective immediately with a public statement accepting responsibility for the company's problems. Within a week, I was reinstated as CEO. The clients Daniel had diverted returned after learning the truth. The board members who'd abandoned me now praised my resilience during an unprecedented corporate espionage attack. My reputation wasn't just restored, it was enhanced. The tech community rallied around me as a victim who fought back, sharing resources and support. 3 competitors offered partnerships. A security conference invited me to keynote. I moved back into my house, though it no longer felt like home. The garden Rebecca had so carefully tended now seemed like a monument to patience of a different kind, the patience of a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. 18 months have passed since that confrontation in Victor Holloway's glass fortress. The landscape of my life is unrecognizable from both the success I once thought I had and the desperation that followed. Mercicor Solutions has grown to a valuation of $22.6 million, with 37 employees and a client list that includes 4 of the top 10 banks in North America. The security breach methodology that Daniel used has become a case study we use to protect others from similar vulnerabilities. Sometimes the best teachers are our worst experiences. Rebecca, Catherine, works under strict supervision for Victor's foundation, identifying potential fraud schemes before they target victims. She lives in a modest apartment in Seattle, monitored electronically and limited to a $3,000 monthly allowance. The woman who once spent that much on a handbag now buys her clothes at Target. She's apologized to 14 of her former victims in supervised sessions that Victor records and archives. Some forgave her. Others spat in her face. She accepts both reactions with the same flat expression. Daniel, Tyler, proved more valuable in dismantling Whitmore's network. His financial expertise helped federal prosecutors trace money through 74 shell companies across 22 countries. He lives in Chicago now, working as a consultant to a cybersecurity firm owned by another Holloway subsidiary. His salary goes mostly to restitution payments. He's lost the easy charm that once made him so dangerous, aging a decade in 18 months. As for James Whitmore, he never made it to his private jet. Federal agents arrested him at his hotel based on evidence Victor had accumulated. He's currently awaiting trial on 37 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. 3 more charges of negligent homicide are pending, including the death of Victor's daughter, Emily. Victor himself has become a strange sort of mentor to me. Once a month, I drive up to his Malibu compound and we discuss business, security, and the darker aspects of human nature, lessons I should have learned before they cost me everything. People will always be the greatest vulnerability in any system, he told me during our last meeting. No firewall can protect against calculated betrayal. I've sold the Westlake Village house. Too many ghosts walked those halls. I live in a downtown loft now, with floor-to-ceiling windows and not a single plant. I've started dating again, cautiously. Her name is Lauren, an architectural engineer I met through a security project. She knows my story, everyone in tech does now, and understands why I ask so many questions, why I verify even small details, why trust comes so slowly. Verify, then trust, she said on our 3rd date, but don't forget the second part. The hardest lesson wasn't about security protocols or financial controls. It was understanding that my success had made me a target, but my isolation made me vulnerable. I'd built walls around my company, but left my life unguarded. Working 80-hour weeks hadn't just cost me awareness. It had severed the human connections that might have protected me. Real friends would have noticed Rebecca's changing behavior. Family would have questioned Daniel's sudden interest in my home life. I'd traded human intelligence for artificial intelligence, and it nearly destroyed me. Last week, I visited the Los Angeles homeless shelter where I'd spent 3 nights during my lowest period. I brought a $50,000 donation and a commitment to provide cybersecurity training to residents trying to rebuild their lives. I met a former software engineer named Paul who'd lost everything in a divorce. First went the house, then the job, then my self-respect, he told me, eyes fixed on the floor. Once you're down, the world keeps kicking. I recognized myself in his hunched shoulders, his nervous glance, the shame that radiated from him. I handed him my card. Call me Monday. I need senior engineers who understand how systems and people can fail. He called. He starts next week. The most valuable thing Victor gave me wasn't the evidence or the resources to fight back. It was the understanding that what happened to me wasn't unique or personal. It was a methodology, a calculated attack that could have targeted anyone with the right profile. They chose you because you were successful, isolated, and overly trusting, Victor explained. They didn't hate you. They didn't even know you. You were simply an optimal target. That knowledge freed me from the spiral of self-doubt that had consumed me. I wasn't uniquely gullible or blind. I was selected by professionals who had perfected their craft over decades. The foundation Rebecca claimed to love so much is now truly serving its purpose. I've restructured it to support victims of similar schemes, providing legal assistance, cybersecurity upgrades, and most importantly, a community that understands the unique trauma of such betrayal. We've helped 67 people rebuild after targeted frauds, from small business owners to tech executives. My mother lives with me now, in the guest suite of my loft. After my father died, she spent 15 years alone, convinced she was protecting her independence. Now she admits she was just hiding from connection. Your father would be proud, she told me last night as we shared dinner on my balcony, not of the money or the company, of how you helped others after you healed yourself. The recording I made that day, capturing Rebecca and Daniel's admission in my bedroom, has become evidence in 7 different cases. Their voices explaining their methodology has helped prosecutors understand how these operations target victims. Sometimes I still hear those voices in my dreams. You made it so easy, Alex. They were right. I did make it easy. But now I make it harder, not just for myself, but for everyone under my protection. Victor's health is failing. He's accomplished his mission of dismantling Whitmore's network and avenging his daughter, but the effort has taken its toll. Last month, he named me to the board of Holloway Enterprises, a responsibility I never sought but cannot refuse. You understand both sides now, he said, his voice weaker than before. The technical and the human, that's rarer than you think. Sometimes I drive past my old house in Westlake Village. The new owners have torn out Rebecca's carefully planned garden and installed a children's playground. Life replacing manipulation, growth covering calculation. The greatest irony is that Rebecca and Daniel's betrayal ultimately made me stronger, wealthier, and more connected than I would have been otherwise. The company they tried to destroy has tripled in value. The reputation they sought to ruin has become a powerful story of resilience. The man they left sleeping in his car now helps others find shelter. I still have the recording of that day saved on a secure server. Not as evidence anymore, its legal purpose is complete, but as a reminder of how quickly everything can change. For worse and for better. The lesson wasn't just about betrayal, it was about rebuilding. Not just systems, but self. Not just wealth, but worth. Yesterday, I received a letter from Rebecca, her monthly progress report required by her arrangement with Victor. Usually, these are formal, detached documents listing her compliance activities. This one was different. I want you to know, she wrote in careful handwriting, that it wasn't all an act. There were moments, your kindness to my mother at her birthday, your patience teaching me about network architecture, when I almost walked away from the assignment, almost told you the truth. In another life, we might have been real. I burned the letter without responding. Some bridges cannot and should not rebuild. Lauren and I are talking about marriage. Cautiously, carefully, with clear eyes. She suggested a prenuptial agreement before I could. Trust with verification, she called it, making me smile. We're taking it slowly, building a foundation based on honesty rather than illusion. The trust I extend now is different, tempered by experience, strengthened by verification, but still necessary. Because a life without trust is no life at all. It's merely survival. If my story has taught me anything, it's that true security isn't found in isolation or suspicion. It's built through authentic connection, diverse perspective, and the courage to remain open even after betrayal. I don't hate Rebecca and Daniel anymore. That emotion burned itself out somewhere between homelessness and revival. I don't forgive them either. Some actions lie beyond forgiveness. Instead, I've reached something more valuable: understanding. They were instruments of a system designed to exploit trust. By exposing that system, we've weakened it for everyone. The garden I'm growing now isn't made of plants. It's built of relationships, genuine ones, tested and verified. It's cultivated through honesty, maintained through communication, and harvested in moments of real connection. Last week, Paul, the engineer I hired from the shelter, identified a potential security flaw that could have compromised 3 banking clients. When I asked how he spotted it, he said simply, "I know what it's like when systems fail completely. You see the weak points differently from the ground." Sometimes our greatest insights come from our most painful falls. Today, MERSCOR's security protocols are studied by our competitors. Our client retention rate stands at 96%. Our employee turnover is the lowest in the industry. We build security not just through code, but through community. Teams that communicate, leaders who listen, systems that balance trust with verification. The stranger who changed everything, Victor Holloway, won't live to see next year. His doctors have been clear about that. But his legacy continues, not just in dismantling criminal networks, but in demonstrating how justice can be both ruthless and restorative. "Vengeance alone is empty," he told me during our last meeting. "It must create something better than what it destroys." That's what I'm building now, something better. Not despite my betrayal, but because of it. My name is Alex Mercer. I lost everything, then gained something more valuable: perspective. The view from the bottom shows you what truly matters at the top. If this story touched your soul, if you believe justice exists and that we can rise from the ashes, please like, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications. In the comments, share your own story of overcoming. Let's support each other. Share this video with someone going through a difficult time. Remember, your story isn't over yet, and the best chapters may still be coming. 2 incredible stories are appearing on screen now. Choose one to continue this journey of hope. Until next time, may you find your own victorious turning point. God bless you.